It's time for a little comedy, a little content, and a lot of conversation. It's the Geno Jones Show, exclusively right here on YouTube. And now here's your host, Geno Jones.
Hello, everybody. How we doing today? It is Tuesday, day 2. Hey, we're getting closer to spring. The days are getting longer. Sun is shining. My name is Geno Jones. Yeah, I guess you figured it out, right? Yeah, you figured it out because you see my name behind me. It is time for the Geno Jones Show daily. I do it live Monday through Friday right here on my YouTube channel. I've got one of the top real estate advisors in America as my guest today, and we're going to talk about racism in the housing industry, a crazy story out of the Bay Area of California. If you hadn't heard, I'll tell you about it. And my advisor will kind of tell you what you can do to protect yourself, to keep from having something crazy like this incident that I'm going to share with you from happening to you. And if it does happen to you, she'll also give you some advice on what you need to do to rectify that situation. Speaking of California, in case you hadn't heard right now, it is in real time breaking news. This news conference, this actually just ended out in Southern California, in the Los Angeles area. Tiger Woods, the greatest golfer ever, in many cases, arguably. I'm not a golf fan. I'm a Tiger Woods fan. But many would say the greatest golfer ever. He was injured in a one-car accident. The car rolled over, and the whole front end was smashed. The car was totaled. The good news is Tiger Woods is alive. Non-life-threatening injuries, according to the officials. However, according to the officials, some of the officials that were on the scene, some of the EMS workers, you had the supervisors from the police department and the EMS in that area. Apparently, Tiger Woods had suffered broken legs, and some other injuries. Good news, he did survive. According to the police, there was no scent of alcohol, no sign of any type of impairment, but he totaled the car. It was a courtesy car. He was at a golf tournament out in California, not playing, but he was more like a guest, and he did some commentating, or he was on television talking to some of the TV hosts, talking about what's happening with his career. Is he going to play in the Masters, which he said he didn't know because he just recently had his 5th back surgery. So, but if you saw the car, if you've seen the car was completely totaled. And one of the officers on the scene said that if it wasn't for the type of car that he was in, and I don't recall exactly what type of car, that the accident could have been fatal. But apparently the carriage, the part that houses the driver, was pretty sturdy. That survived the crash, but the front end of the car did not. So he hit some things, and apparently I think hit a tree. But it was just a one-car accident, and Tiger Woods was the only person in the car. He is, at this moment that I'm coming to you, speaking to you, he is probably either just getting out of surgery, or they're wrapping up the surgery because it's been a couple hours now. So once again, Tiger Woods, greatest golfer ever, was involved in a one-car crash out in the Los Angeles area. As a matter of fact, the area just south of downtown LA and south, I guess you could say southwest of downtown LA. South and down near this area is not too far from the ocean. So southwest of downtown Los Angeles. So for those who believe in the power of prayer, lift Eldrick Tiger Woods up into your prayers. So I want to say congratulations to Jay-Z, Mr. Sean Carter. He signed a 50-50 partnership with Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy to his own Ace of Spades champagne brand. So now he's got the power and the branding and the distribution of Louis Vuitton Moet and Hennessy behind his company and promoting the brand. Now, they call it LVMH, Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy. This company owns Rihanna's Fenty company, Fenty Beauty. Also, you got Louis Vuitton, you got Moet, you got Dom Perignon, you've got Givenchy, you've got Sephora, Tiffany, Dior, and now the Ace of Spades champagne, Jay-Z, Mr. Sean Carter. He said, I'm not a businessman, I am a businessman. Shout out to Sean Carter, handle your business. So can you believe in 2020, still in 2020, racism in the housing industry still exists? Yeah, I know you're saying, gee, racism in America still exists. So did you think that it wouldn't exist in the housing industry? But when you hear a story like this, you'll really be just appalled and angry and be like, really? What are we doing? So in case you hadn't heard, there's a black couple from the Bay Area of California. They were lowballed by $500,000. That's right. They were lowballed by $500,000 until a white friend posed as the owner of their home. So this is the story of Paul and Tanisha Tate Austin. So in 2016, they purchased a home in Marin, California. That's in the San Francisco Bay Area general area, San Francisco, San Jose, somewhere in that general area, all right? So when they bought the home, they purchased it for somewhere a little over $900,000. Let's just say that. So they spend $400,000 on renovations. So their lender, they contact the lender, they want to get the home appraised now because they've spent all this money. They invested $400,000 in upgrades to the home. So the lender sends out the first appraiser. The family said that the appraiser was an older white woman, and they just felt they got a funny vibe. She was just, the questions that she was asking, they felt something wasn't right. Well, when the first appraisal of the house came back, they said, wait a minute, wait one damn minute. This first appraiser basically appraised the value of the home as what it was before they had invested $400,000 in upgrades. So roughly 4 years ago, the home's value was around $980,000. So after spending $400,000 to upgrade the home, this first appraiser, she comes out and appraises the value of the home at, guess what? Around $980-something thousand. So, wait a minute, Paul and Tanisha said, hold on. So they have a neighbor, a friend, a white woman. They said, hey, would you be Tanisha? We just feel that something is funny. So their white friend, she said, sure, I'll be Tanisha. So the white Tanisha comes over. She basically takes all of her family photos and everything, and she places them around the house. So when you come in, you'll think it's her house. You see pictures of her and her family and the whole 9 yards. So the lender sends out a second appraiser, and wait until you hear what this value for the second appraisal came out to be. $500,000 more than the first appraisal. $500,000 more. Second appraisal, the exact same house. No more upgrades. Everything, the only thing that changed in the house was the pictures around the house and the color of the woman who they thought was Tanisha. $500,000. So apparently and unfortunately, this is pretty common. So right now I want to bring to the show a guest, a friend of mine, one of the top real estate, I'll say experts, for lack of a better term, she'll correct me. So she's one of the top real estate experts in America. And her name is Melanie Bias, and we're going to bring her to the show right now. Hello, Melanie. How are you? Be sure to unmute you so I can hear you.
Unmuted.
There you go. Thank you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So hopefully I got one of the top real estate. I say experts. You gave me a different
I'm an
term.
advisor. I'm a real estate advisor.
Okay.
in
the
addition
A.
to being,
I got stuck.
agent.
I got, yes, one of the top real estate advisors in America, ladies and gentlemen.
No worries. Thank you.
So I'm sure you heard about that story. So I'll just I'll just let you give your general opinion on this story, because I know we've talked off camera, and unfortunately, the story of Tanisha and her husband Paul is not that uncommon when it comes to African Americans.
You're absolutely right. It's unfortunate that it happened to Paul and Tanisha, but it's not surprising in the least. And to your point, in this day and age, in 2021, it should be the last thing that we as African Americans should be faced with. But unfortunately, it is still very much prevalent. And Geno, as we were speaking, last week about this topic, I was obviously I'm passionate about the topic because real estate is something that I've been kind of eating, breathing, and living for the past 15 years. I believe that it is the only way in which African Americans can really build wealth, starting with just one of the largest assets that we can acquire, on top of owning our own business and things of that nature. But when there is a basically systemic racism around lending practices, something as simple as trying to figure out the true value of your home, when we're faced with that, then it almost seems impossible for us to be able to find equal and fair housing laws, despite the fact that we had, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which helped against discriminatory practices, right? Well over 50 years later, and we're still, not only are we still experiencing it with it, but we've noticed that there's been a drastic decline in home ownership, even with these laws in place, right? So what does that mean for us? It means that we need to do a better job of being armed with resources, whether it's a real estate agent, someone, a real estate advisor, a consultant, someone that that you can trust to call upon and, pick their brain about what's happening in the market and what pitfalls to avoid, and where they can go for additional help and resources to really understand, what's the value of their house and what they feel like they should be able to expect to receive.
So, Mel, let me ask you something. Let me just jump in here for a second.
Sure.
First thing is, what happened to Tanisha and Paul? Is that legal? Is there a federal law against that or not? And does it vary by state?
It's a very, very much of a gray area. So what an appraiser does is they're supposed to look at completed sales, completed transactions within a certain radius of this particular property, and try to place a value on what it actually costs to repair or replace in the event of, just basically what the value is, right? So the reason why I say it's a gray area, it's because it's really, it's up to the appraiser. They have some guidelines in which they're supposed to follow, but at the end of the day, one appraiser can say, the upgrades to your kitchen would net, a 20% return on investment, where another appraiser could say, no, it would only net like 5 to 7% return on investment. So it's very arbitrary. Although they have guidelines to follow, it really is, you're at the discretion or the mercy of the appraiser.
Wow.
To determine what the value is.
So it wouldn't fall under the Fair Housing Act or anything like that?
It really wouldn't, unless you were able to truly pinpoint that this particular appraiser has a history of undervalue or devaluing property, either within a certain area, right? And that we go back to redlining, and I can talk about a little bit more about redlining, or if there is some pattern that they constantly devalue the homes of people of minority or minority status. So it's hard. It really is hard to catch that up. Has it been done? It has. Okay. If you or if anyone out there is listening and they believe that they have either been victims of this type of discrimination, then they can easily go to the Fair Housing and an Equal Opportunity Office at HUD.gov and file a complaint. And that would be the first place to start, in my opinion. We have to, we almost need to start collecting names, businesses, data, almost create a database of those who we have been made aware, almost creating some exposure around who is performing these illegal practices, these discriminatory practices, so that we can steer clear of them and actually go towards the businesses that want to promote and uplift Black ownership.
I'm glad you said that, Mel, because you went exactly to where I was about to go. Because if I'm Paul, and and that happened to me and my wife, I got to admit, I'm feeling some kind of way about the lender, because the lender who I would, you trust, in theory, you trust your lender. But after that, I'd really be looking sideways at the lender. So, I mean, is there anything you could do? Would you recommend, would you try to find another lender? Because I guess you're pretty deep in by the time they send an appraiser out. But I really would feel some kind of way continuing to want to do business with this lender. $500,000, that's a big lot.
That's a huge jump. I mean, that is a huge jump. And so the answer is yes. I mean, when you are going down the process of having an appraiser come out to the house, there are two types of appraisals. There's like a pre-listing or a pre-sale appraisals. You can just kind of get a general idea of what you think that your house will be valued at. And then there's one that the lender would perform if you were willing to if you're ready to put your house on the market and you're looking for a potential buyer. So when you're working, or when the buyer is working with the lender is the one that will send out an appraiser, and they have a list of appraisers that, are in their arsenal. However, as a buyer, you have a right to question, to even confront that appraiser and say, where are the comps that you are using in comparison to my property? And if you do not, if you don't believe that they are providing a fair assessment, then you yourself can pull comps and then share them with your lender and say, this is what I found. Now, please give me an explanation as to why it's not apples to apples, why they're pricing it this way. You have every right to do that.
And Mel, let me just stop right here. For those who may be like new to home ownership, when they hear the term comps, could you explain for those who maybe never owned a home exactly what does that mean?
I apologize for that.
No,
yeah, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself.
No,
but
you're good.
Basically, the short-term comp is short for comparison or comparable. So when you are, let's say you're just going on to Zillow or Realtor.com and you're looking for a house. That house, outside of the beautiful pictures, it'll have a price, right? It'll have a price tag on it, right? Where did that price come from? Well, Zillow uses an algorithm, and a lot of the online, a lot of these online search Realtor.com websites, they use an algorithm that says, based on the square footage of the house, based on the age of the house, and certain other variables, what other houses like that sold in a half-mile radius in the last year? And sometimes it's usually like in the last 6 months or the last 12 months. So based on that information, they're able to determine just a general idea of what the value of that house is. Now, if there haven't been any transactions in a period of time, 6 months, 12 months, then you can either broaden your search to, a broader range around your house, or you can go back further in time. But then they would need to make some adjustments based on inflation, based on, repair and replacement costs, those types of things. But at the end of the day, it's all about your house is based on the value of what your neighbor's house is worth, and so on and so forth. And that is what a comparable or a comp terminology is used to explain.
So what would you recommend for someone who is like Paul and Tanisha? They just spend a lot of money renovating their home, and they're thinking about selling it, or maybe they just want to, find out what the current value is. What advice would you give someone in that situation?
Well, I would first start off by saying congratulations to Tanisha and Paul for actually having the foresight to realize that this may have been a discriminatory practice, right? That the appraiser was, just trying to lowball them for the sake of it. I would say, we need to do, we absolutely have to do our homework. We absolutely have to do research. Find a list of appraisers that are on the internet, read their reviews, call upon friends that have either bought or sold recently, find, an agent like myself or another real estate advisor, say, who do you work with? Who do you like? It's all about relationships at this point. And then get, 2 or 3 names, call them out, ask them some general questions. One, obviously an appraisal costs money. So you want to make sure that you know that up front, how much it's going to cost, based on square footage, yada, yada, yada. And then compare and contrast what this appraiser is saying versus what this one is saying. You have a right to basically, shop around.
Great.
Like
Okay.
Absolutely. I think that would be the best part, but also reaching out to real estate agent who's a friend, someone at work, someone in your community, your neighborhood, who you feel like you can trust to give you a good recommendation. But I would definitely start there.
Now, before we go, I want us to touch on something that we got a chance to talk about last week, and then
Sure.
at the end, I want you to make sure to give some information out. So if people have some questions and they want to contact you, if they're thinking about having their home appraised, or if they're thinking about purchasing a home or selling a home, we want to make sure that they can reach out and contact you. We're here in the Charleston Metro, here in the Carolinas and South Carolina, and in a lot of cities, there's gentrification going on. You guys basically know what gentrification is. When usually poor working class people of color, black people move out, and folks with a lot of money, primarily white folks, move in the neighborhood and flip it. Even though I was asking Mel, why don't we as African Americans begin to gentrify our own neighborhood? That might be a separate show. But you talked about how in a lot of cases, our grandparents or our mothers and fathers, when they get elderly and they've been in their home for 30, 40, 50 years or maybe longer, a lot of developers will come in and really try to pressure them, and maybe almost in a predatory way, maybe get wind that this elderly person may be sick or financially distressed, and kind of lowball them in terms of the offer that they will give them for their home, and then they'll come back and flip it and get the home and the land and sell it for 4 or 5 times or more what they paid for it. So please speak to that, because that's so important. And when you talk about home ownership is so key in terms of because the average net worth for white Americans is like $110,000. The average net worth for African Americans in this country is like $10,000, which is crazy. And
well under,
like you said, one of the biggest reasons is home ownership. And you can talk about redlining. I've talked about it on earlier episodes.
Right.
All these things go into that. So please speak to that main issue that we were talking about, and so there were some things that you really wanted to share with the public that you're very passionate about how we've got to be very intentional and protect, our elderlies or whatever homes or assets that we have in our family.
Sure. Well, I can start by saying, yes, gentrification is happening in pretty much every major city, and even small communities, right? So that's pretty much across the board. Here in Charleston, we are definitely seeing it in record numbers. South Carolina, we have to tip our hat to South Carolina in the sense that we have a pretty sizable African American community, and a large number, almost 50%. Of that African American community, we actually own our own homes, so that it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. However, that is slowly declining, or that has been declining year after year. So with that being said, gentrification does play a role in that. So what I have experienced, or what we are experiencing here in Charleston, is we are coming across older family members, older members in the Black community. they're still living in their home, they own their home, but they do not have the resources that are necessary to repair their home to livable condition, right? So they're receiving letters, they're receiving phone calls, knocks on the doors, you name it, from developers, investors, trying to buy low and sell high. I mean, just with any product, right? Mm-hmm. We live in a capitalistic society. I mean, thank goodness for that, right? We have to, we have to be proud of that.
Right.
But there are ways in which we need to protect not only ourselves but also our the elderly in our community from these predatory practices. So if by chance you have a family member that continues to receive constant communication about selling the home, and if that family member is interested in selling their home, then I would advise them first and foremost to speak with a real estate advisor or real estate agent. Speak with them. The good news about South Carolina, I know there's an agent on every corner, right? So you can find one at church, you can find one, pretty much anywhere that that you feel comfortable with socializing. And speak to them about what you think or what they think that the house is worth. So at least have a baseline. And so then when these people are going to come in and knocking on your door and begging you to sell your grandmother's home or, your uncle's home, then at least where the baseline starts. And you're not going to get completely overwhelmed when they offer you $100,000 and then in turn flipping it for 600 grand. I mean, because that's typically what happens after they've done their renovation and property values go up. And then, we have to move out of the neighborhood because we can't afford to live there anymore. So anyway, just like I said before, information is key. Having resources at your disposal is key. Ask as many questions as you feel that you need to in order to get an understanding of what you're up against and what you have to work with in terms of the value of the home. And then myself and I'm sure other agents would be able to map out a strategy to help, when you're ready to sell, if you are ready to sell at all. But there are other ways in which you can maintain the asset, increase the value of your house without having to sell. So that was the other thing we were talking about.
And we were talking about, even though we love capitalism, but capitalism's got to work for everybody. And unfortunately, in America, capitalism has not worked for African Americans like it has for others, and that we know. So that's where knowledge is power, and people like Mel are power. So Mel, speak to the redlining, and after you do that, just give everyone information in case if you're looking to buy, if you're looking to sell, if you need some advice, you have an elderly family member, you have property in the home and you're trying to decide what to do with it. Maybe you don't want to sell it. Maybe you might want to think about using it for income property. Mel is an expert in all that. She can give you some great advice. But let's talk about redlining, because what happened to the couple in the Bay Area was not necessarily redlining, but it still falls under that discrimination when it comes to housing. And redlining has been sinister for decades. Right. And we as Black Americans, we've lost so much value and we've been overcharged when it comes to insurance and lending because of this racist practice that's illegal called redlining. So speak to that.
So I can tell you about the history of redlining, and I'm sure many may be surprised, maybe not. But it really started right after the Great Depression, where people lost, large sums of money. They lost wealth across the board. And a lot of value that was in one's home, equity as they call it, was lost as well. So the government decided that they were going to come in and buy the mortgages, pretty much buy the note that is tied to the house and insure it, right? So if a bank goes under, or if a person loses their job and they can't afford to pay the note, then the government would step in and ensure that the bank would receive its money. So during this time when we are rebuilding after the Great Depression, the government set out a map of each major city and small areas around that and said, okay, if we are going to provide insurance for you banks to lend money to these areas, but we are not going to do it in low income minority areas. And that is how redlining began. And it has continued on, because once the government started doing it, then the insurance companies, as you said, got a hold and said, oh, well, if they can do it, we can do it. And then the banks, also did the same thing. Well, if we are not going to be insured, right? So if there's no assurance that we're going to get our money, we're not going to lend in the areas that the government has deemed ineligible. That's pretty much how it starts. And although, it's a practice that is supposed to not be in existence anymore, there are still very much areas where that you're going to either get a lowball value or you're going to receive pennies on the dollar for your house just because. So I hope that was a clear answer.
No, you did great, and I love the history.
Conversation.
No, and it was so important that you explained the history of redlining and exactly where it started. Because I've heard stories, and I know you know better than I do, but it got so insidious and they got so bold with the racism of redlining that the banks and insurance companies would have walls with these giant maps with zip codes. And the zip codes that had predominantly African Americans living in those zip codes, they literally would take like a red marker or Sharpie and draw red lines around it, like do not insure, we do not.
We cannot lend.
Yes.
Yep.
And
that is absolutely right. Or we would then receive the highest interest rate known to man, right? Something that we would never be able to pay back and then actually have some equity left in the house. So yes, but getting back to the systemic racism around the housing authority. But anyway.
But knowledge is power. And people like Melanie Bias can help you with that. So like you said, if you're thinking about buying a house, selling a house, you want some information, you think you've been a victim like Tanisha and her husband Paul out in California, and you think that you've been lowballed on an appraisal or whatever, Mel, give everybody the information where they can contact you.
Absolutely. So first, you can contact me at mel@southerncharmadvisors.com. It's all one word. I'm also an agent with Berkshire Hathaway Carolina Sun. So you can contact me at melanie@bhhssun.com. You can just Google me as well. My contact information pops up. So feel free. I get emails and phone calls all hours of the night, and I'm here to help.
And give us that email address again.
Sure. It's melanie@bhhssun.com. Or Mel@Southern Charm Advisors. So if you have an investment question, if you have anything really related to home values and whatnot, especially distressed properties, we can assist.
Any social media contacts that you want to share with the public, with the audience?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. So I'm sure you're familiar with Berkshire Hathaway. It's owned by Warren Buffett. So not too hard to find out where we are in that one. But we're Berkshire Hathaway Carolina Sun. No problem. We're located right outside of the Charleston area in Mount Pleasant. And so just bhhssun.com.
Okay.
And you can also find me at melaniebias.com. Okay. So I've got every handle. Which one you want?
Gotcha. Thank you. Melanie Bias.
No
thank you, Mel. You gave this is some great advice. And so if anybody watching, if you got any questions, it could be, especially for first-time homeowners, and I know from experience, it can be exciting.
Yes.
But if you're not careful,
nerve-wracking, scary.
A friend of mine gave me some great advice, and he was actually he was an account executive at a radio station I used to work at in Memphis when we got our first home. And he said, own the house. Don't let the house own you.
There you go.
And I thought that was some great advice.
Absolutely.
So Melanie,
absolutely.
Melanie will make sure that you will own the house and that the house won't own you.
Right. My grandmother calls it mortgage poor. You don't want to be mortgage poor,
Yeah, no
right?
doubt.
All
No
you can
doubt.
do is afford the house and nothing else,
Yeah,
right?
thank
So
you.
it's about quality of living all the way around.
Wonderful.
But home ownership is definitely the first start of creating wealth for you and your family for many years.
Melanie, great advice. Thank you so much. So you are officially a member of the Geno Jones family.
All
So
right. Thank you, sir.
anytime we have any questions about real estate, that industry, hopefully, God forbid, no more stories like Paul and Tanisha.
I know.
But
Well,
if
hoping for better stories
Right. Yeah,
for
but if we
absolutely.
see any crazy stories that we need to shine a light on and get some great advice, we'll be sure to bring you back on the show. Thank you,
Thank you,
Melanie
sir. I
Byers. Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
She
All right.
is
Have a good one.
you too, Melanie
Bye-bye.
Byers. She's phenomenal, guys. Really, sister knows her stuff. She's top notch. So if you're thinking about buying or selling a home, you need to make sure you contact her ASAP. Thank you for letting me be a part of your life. As always, God bless each and every one of you. God, most of all, thank you for letting me do the Geno Show. Monday through Friday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 in Chicago, 3:30 out in Los Angeles. If you'd like to be a sponsor of the Geno Jones Show, I'd be honored to have you as a sponsor. If you'd like to advertise, if you have a business that you want to promote, a new business, existing business, and you'd like to come on and be a guest and tell us the story about your business and tell us how you can be contacted. You could be someone like Melanie Byers there, real estate advisor. So reach out to me right here. You can email me, Geno Jones Show, Gmail. That's how you spell Geno, Geno, Geno Jones Show at Gmail. Or just leave me a message right here on my YouTube channel. Shout out to Markel Bailey, the official hairstylist and barber for the Geno Jones Show. You can check him out on Instagram, Kelby Cuttin, KelbeCuttin. Also, shout out to the official wardrobe stylist and consultant who is celebrating a birthday today. I believe he's legal, 21 or 22 today. Mr. Bruce Gage up in Chicago. Check him out on Instagram, Bruce Gage, Gage. Also, flyballthestore.com, flyballthestore.com. He is one of the few officially licensed vendors to carry the Negro League, the Negro Baseball League gear, jackets, and they got sweaters and T-shirts and masks and dresses for the ladies. So check it out if you're really into a history, African American history, the history of the Negro Baseball League. Just some really good, some fly-looking gear. Check out Flyball the Store, or just check out Mr. Bruce Gage, the official wardrobe consultant for the Geno Jones Show. All right, everybody, I love you. I really do. Mother, I love you. I know you're watching. Thank you for watching. Once again, thank you to Melanie Byers, one of the top real estate advisors here in America. You got her contact information she gave you. You can just rewind and go back and get all the information in case you're thinking about buying a home, selling a home. You want to make sure you get a fair appraisal of a home. Maybe you just spent thousands of dollars to renovate your home, to upgrade your home. You've got property in the family and people that's trying to come in, and investors and folks want to buy your grandma's or your uncle's house. Yeah, talk to somebody like Melanie Byers before you let that happen, okay? She'll make sure she steers you right, everybody. All right, tomorrow will be Wednesday, hump day. And on my way out, I just want to give you an update one more time. Tiger Woods was seriously injured. Fortunately, those injuries, according to police and authorities, are not life-threatening. But he did get serious injuries. He was involved in a one-car crash. It was just him in the car alone. He was in a courtesy car. There was a golf tournament over the weekend. He was out in California. He wasn't golfing, but he was at the tournament. And this morning around 7:12 Los Angeles time, because he was just in a suburb, just a town just southwest of downtown Los Angeles. He didn't hit anybody. No one hit him. He just, I guess, somehow lost control. Apparently this is a very narrow, winding road, and he was going downhill. So according to the police, they believe that the car, especially going downhill, because he wasn't familiar with the road, maybe he was going too fast, and that curve came up on him. I don't know. But the bottom line is he was involved in a crash. Serious injuries, non-life-threatening. That is the best news. Apparently, he broke both of his legs, and he just had back surgery. So, according to the paramedic that was on the scene, he said that Mr. Woods was in a lot of pain, and I could imagine. But the great news, thank God that he's alive. That's the most important thing. If he can never golf, and we pray that he is able to golf again. But the most important thing is that he is alive. You know, around this time last year, we lost an icon, a sports icon in Southern California that was involved in a plane crash. A helicopter crash. Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna, Gigi, and 7 other people that were in a helicopter on their way to a game. Their daughters were playing a basketball game. So it just, when I first heard the news, you just get that sinking feeling in your stomach. You're like, oh, wow, not again. Out in Los Angeles or out in the LA metro area, just hoping and praying that he did survive. So thank God that Tiger Woods, even though he's experienced some serious injuries, and apparently he's in a lot of pain according to authorities, he's alive. He had to have surgery, but he is apparently resting in a hospital in Southern California. All right, everybody. I love you. I really do. Thank you again for watching. We'll see you tomorrow, Wednesday, Hump Day edition of the Geno Jones Show. Until then, be blessed. Thanks again.
Subscribe and tune in to the next episode of the Geno Jones Show, exclusively right here on YouTube.